Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 85. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. And so, to our guest for this episode. Tell me who you are first.
I'm Alison McLean.
And who are you representing in this particular project?
So I'm representing the Records and Archives team at Northamptonshire Police.
A lot of people, I guess, won't know there is such a thing. Presumably, you have access to a whole host of different objects and stories from down the years.
We do. We're really privileged to be the sort of temporary custodians of the Northampton Police Museum collection. It's something that's been built up over the last 40 years by various curators, many of whom were ex-police officers and volunteers. And it's such a privilege to be able to look through these artefacts. We've got uniform and equipment, documents and photographs, and books have been written as well, which is really handy for us to help link all these things together.
Tell me about the object that you've selected for the project.
It's a really exciting and unusual object, and we're really proud to have this in our collection. It's a World War II spy radio.
How did it come to be in the hands of Northamptonshire Police?
It's a really interesting story. In September 1940, a German spy parachuted into the county. There's some anecdotal evidence that maybe he was misaligned and he should have been near Yardley in Birmingham, but he ended up between Denton and Yardley Hastings, and he was found on some farmland by a farm worker, and he was just laying in a ditch, slightly dazed, and that's how he came to be here.
So he parachuted out of an aircraft, lost consciousness, and was then arrested on ground here. What happened to the would-be spy?
Well, it's quite an engaging story in some ways. So the farmhand found him and he didn't sort of think too much about it, slightly odd circumstances, but he thought he may be just a vagrant that was taking a sleep in this ditch. So he mentioned it briefly to the farmer. His name was Cliff Beechner. He said, there's this strange character laying in a ditch. Cliff was in the Home Guard at that point, and so he picked up his gun and he went off to investigate and found this chap just quite amiable, and he marched him back to the farmhouse and phoned the police. So the inspector and superintendent came over from Northampton to Elms Farm in Denton and arrested the chap. And then they went back to retrieve all his belongings, amongst which they found the radio, a parachute, and his suitcase containing his belongings.
Now, this radio, this is a fairly substantial piece of kit.
Absolutely. So it's sort of a medium-sized brown fibreboard briefcase or suitcase-sized article. And it's quite weighty. It weighs about 10 kilos. It contains a radio receiver and transmitter set, 3 batteries and a Morse key. The lid, sadly, is detached. Other than that, it's in remarkably good condition, considering it's over 80 years old.
Has it been in the hands of Northamptonshire Police all this time, just gathering dust?
It's been with us since the 70s. It was seized at the time, and all his belongings were handed over to MI5. It's not quite clear how we got it back, but we do have evidence that it was returned to us. And it's been tucked away in safe storage ever since at various locations, but due to the nature of the importance of this item, it's always been under lock and key.
So it's an item that appeared over Northamptonshire skies mistakenly. Mm-hmm. It accompanied a hapless spy who never used it.
Yeah.
And it contributed, I believe, to him being rendered unconscious, didn't it?
That's the story. The story has been embellished somewhat over the years, and we have taken all our evidence from the original police statements, MI5 documents, and first accounts of people on site, because it's an interesting story, and people have just added their little bits to it.
Why do you think this object should be included within the exhibition of the histories of Northamptonshire in 100 objects?
Because it's such an unusual item, and it's a real snapshot into life in rural Northamptonshire in World War II. So we've got the hero of, the heroics of the Home Guard. You conjure up images of Dad's army. Then you've got the two senior police officers motoring across to Denton to arrest this chap. And there's lots of telegrams and top secret documents going back and forth to Whitehall. And then we took him under armed guard to Cannon Row Police Station in London. So it's just got all this element of drama, really.
Well, exactly. You talk about drama, and we're sort of conducting this conversation with big grins on our faces. But actually, if he'd been dropped in the right place, if he hadn't been knocked unconscious, if his radio had worked, he could have contributed to the downfall of the United Kingdom and the Allies in World War II.
Absolutely, and that was why it was so important for him to be turned, as it were. So he agreed to be enrolled in the double cross system. It's an MI5 system where they turned foreign spies and used them to send bogus information back to, well, in this case, Germany. He would have always been imprisoned or potentially faced the death penalty for being a spy. But because he was a Swedish national, not a German, but a Nazi sympathiser, he could possibly have evaded criminal trial, but he would have had a civil trial. But he agreed to be part of the double-cross system, and he was really useful for some months until he decided he wanted to make an escape attempt. And that's when the story takes another turn.
Which is?
So he was in a safe house in Hinxton in Cambridgeshire, and he was under armed guard. He managed to overpower one of his guards and tied him up, bound him hand and foot, and escaped from this house. And in an outbuilding, he found a motorcycle and a 12-foot-long canoe. And he decided to try and strap the canoe to the motorcycle and head for the coast. That was his plan, to head to the east coast and escape. Well, he made it out of the village, and lots of witnesses saw him. And he fell off numerous times because it was so unwieldy, the motorcycle with this canoe. Eventually, he decided it was probably quite a bad idea and gave himself up at Newmarket Police Station.
So he was actually of rather more use to the Allies than he was the Nazis. Do we know what happened to the radio other than it was collected up? You say it's in a fiberboard suitcase. Has anybody tested if it actually is workable? Is it intact, or did it get broken when it was landing with him attached to it in a field near Denton?
As far as we can tell, it's not been used. It's in very good condition still. The batteries that are there are still wrapped in paper. We think it's all complete, and the only real damage that the suitcase sustained was the lid was detached. So it's very rigid, the box that it's in, and it's nicely lined. So as far as we can tell, it still should work.
It's still quite a sizable piece of equipment, and I suppose, strictly speaking, it doesn't belong to Britain. Has anybody been in touch with the Germans to say, we've got one of your radios, would you like it back, please?
Not as far as I'm aware, but that's part of our duty, is to try and establish the provenance of this thing and who actually owns it. I guess ultimately it would be the Home Office or someone that would have that task to try and return it wherever.
It's clearly a prized possession as far as your organisation is concerned. How does it make you feel when you encounter this thing, when you see this thing?
I'm absolutely thrilled. I love showing it off. If we have visitors, or we've had the Chief Constable come down to see it, and he was absolutely fascinated. I'm so proud to be in contact with this item. And we also have the declassified MI5 documents, and we've been to the local records office at Wootton, and we've retrieved the original police statements and other documents to support our research in this. And also we've been researching with the National Archive because they have some documents as well. And it's such a privilege to be able to look at this thing, because it's the backstory, and I think we can impart our enthusiasm for it as well. And it's the wider story it tells, especially about Northamptonshire, that something so sort of exciting has happened on our doorstep.
It's a lovely story. I'm sure anybody listening to you speak has now an image in their mind of this would-be but completely ineffective spy as far as the Nazis were concerned, arriving from the sky, crash landing, knocking himself out, being arrested, turned into a double spy, but never returned to Germany, presumably with his radio in his damaged suitcase to continue his work. The flip side to that is, thank goodness he wasn't able to do what he was originally intending to do for the Nazis.
Well, that's it. And he brought lots of really useful intelligence, because he gave really detailed accounts of radio frequencies, how to encipher codes, dates and times of transmissions, other agents as well. He gave up lots of information. Some of it may have been false, but he did, from the interrogation notes that we've been privileged to see, he seemed very free with a lot of information. So he was very, very useful to the British at that time. Maybe not such a good spy on behalf of Germany, but he certainly did the UK a favour.
Alison, it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for putting this particular object into the exhibition, and thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com. Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.